Hello there, boys and girls. So, today we're doing my first non-fiction review. I decided to keep the glasses to be all academic-like. Okay, today we're reviewing The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. Gary Chapman? Something like that. So for non-fiction, there are a couple of other things that are important. I would say this is a non-fiction, almost a little bit of a self-help type of book, and instead of style and pacing and story structure and things like that we usually talk about, there's a couple of other important aspects to discuss before I kind of get into a quick summary of the book and give you an idea of whether or not you'd be interested in reading it. First thing is definitely the voice, because especially in these self-help type of books, the author is speaking directly at you. So it's important that I give you an idea of what his voice is like, what he is like, because if you don't like the author and he's speaking at you, you're not going to enjoy this conversation and you're not going to enjoy the book. So Gary Chapman, he's a pastor, and a lot of those views inform the text. It's not to say that the text explicitly refers to religion as a solution, or as it's not a religious text at all. That's what I'm trying to say. But it does come up in his examples, because that's who he is, and I would rather have him be honest in putting that in the forefront. If that's in the forefront of his mind, I'd rather have him be honest and put it in the forefront of his book. But the rest of it, he's very much like a counselor, trying to explain to you as almost like another counselor or another patient of his why you should follow his advice. So he's telling the stories and he's using his anecdotes, but he's trying to convince you that this advice works. He's not trying to tell you to try it out in your own life. He's saying, if you're having these problems, this is the best solution, and I can tell you this based on these experiences. And then he gives you experiences through every single little example of times that it has worked out and times that it hasn't worked out. Another thing I need to mention, I read the marriage edition, so a lot of the anecdotes that I read while learning about the 5 love languages are about marriages and failing marriages and trying to stop divorce and things like that. So it's very much romantic love. But the 5 love languages has been such a popular theory and such popular non-fiction self-help books that I think there are editions across every type of relationship. Friendships, basics, even work relationships, and with your children. So it's definitely not only meant to be in romantic type of relationships. And once again, although he's a pastor and these types of ideas stick to his examples, stick to heterosexual couples, I don't think this is limited to that. This is a human thing. All humans have this, and all humans can kind of use and learn it if you agree that this is the way to go. So let's start with his thesis statement. The point of this theory and the explanation of what the 5 love languages are and how they should be used. So he starts by saying that relationships go sour not because people don't love each other or don't love each other anymore or don't love each other like they used to. The problem is that they don't know how to love each other. And that's interesting in and of itself. So the way he explains the problem is it's like people in a relationship are speaking 2 or 3 different languages. And if you can't speak that language, you struggle to grasp what's going on. And he identifies 5 love languages and says that if you learn to speak the language of your partner and learn to listen when they speak to you, if you learn this new language, then you will understand that your partner really loves you and is trying to show you that they love you, but they're struggling because you're not speaking the same language. And of course, every one of these languages has a lot of dialects and subcategories, but the main 5 remain. So throughout the book, he will guide you in discovering your own love languages to figure out where you rank on the 5, because of course anybody can experience love in any of the different ways, but some people are more attuned to a certain type of love. And there are different reasons for this. Sometimes it's because this was the love that your parents gave you, so it's the love that you are used to receiving, just like we learn first language, our native tongue, from our parents. or from whoever raised us. It's the love that we're used to receiving, and then we learn to give it in return. So the next step is to identify your partner's love languages. And that's to say, what is the primary way that my partner is trying to communicate that they love me? And then he gives you hints. If these behaviors happen, then you can reasonably assume that this is the love language that they're trying to use, and then you can try to learn how to speak it. And that's the third thing. He is trying to teach couples how to speak each other's love languages so that they can show each other affection in a way that means something. So if I keep telling you Axlifio, 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 but you don't understand what I'm saying, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that I've just told you I love you. You need to understand it. So the first step is being able to speak the language. And then the second step, or the fourth step in this list, is to be able to listen to it. To be able to hear when your partner is trying to convey their love to you, so that you can feel appreciated in return. So then, spoilers. So let's go through the 4 points again, just briefly. Discover your own love languages. Identify your partner's love languages. Speak a language so that you can tell your partner you appreciate them. And listen so that you can recognize love when it is given. The first love language is physical touch. That means that you value closeness and distance hurts you. So a quick example of this would be, say Susie's love language is physical touch. To her, a happy marriage would be one where every day, when her husband goes out of the house for work or whatever, he gives her a peck on the cheek. And every day when he comes back, he gives her a peck on the cheek. That closeness, that physical touch, communicates to her that he loves her and that he cares about her, that he recognizes her and he cares about her and he loves her. This is one of the dialects of it, but it's closeness. It's being physically close to somebody. And then one day when Susie's husband stops giving her kisses on the cheeks, she will think that he has stopped loving her, even if that isn't the case at all, even if it was just something he was doing out of habit and not necessarily because it meant anything to him, it meant a lot to her. And that's where the communication breakdown can kind of happen. Second love language, words of affirmation. So these would be compliments instead of insults. So words of affirmation might be, if you're going on Valentine's Day dinner, so topical, and your partner has put in a lot of effort to look good, to say, you look stunning, I really appreciate it. These words of affirmation should be as lavish as you possibly can and as precise as you possibly can. Vague statements are not as effective here as pointed compliments that go towards something that your partner specifically cares about or has put effort into. So that's words of affirmation. Okay, so the third love language is acts of service. So this is doing something for somebody else. You might, for example, show your love to your partner by packing a lunchbox every day. This is work that you put in that goes out of your way to do something special for somebody else. That lunchbox, that packed lunch represents your love, the effort you put into it. This is what cooks say when they say they've made it with love. That means that their love language is acts of service, and they have put in the effort to create this, and their love has gone into it, and you should eat it as such. You are eating love sandwiches. It is important. Fourth love language is gifts. So gift giving can sometimes seen as having bad implications. These are not great lavish gifts for gold diggers. These are small thoughtful items, like picking a flower on your way home because it was pretty and you were pretty, and now they go together. So little gifts. For example, John is going on a trip. John's partner really misses him. Days become weeks and the trip is just dragging on, and John is getting really concerned. Does his partner even love him anymore? They barely talk. He's so busy. And then John comes back with a souvenir, a specially picked little stone statue that represents something from their past. And John says, I've been looking everywhere while I was on the trip, looking out for something I could bring you. And I've been thinking about you, and I thought you'd appreciate this. And it's a little silly kachelkakkie trinket. But you know what? That means the world to people who have the love language of gift giving. That little silly 2 rand trinket, it doesn't matter what it cost. The thought behind it counts, and the physical representation of love. That's what's important. The 5th love language is quality time. So you might be saying, but don't all the previous love languages kind of include a little bit of quality time? Yes, but this is more about focused quality time. This is time you are spending with the person specifically, not just working in silos. It's the difference between living with someone and living in the same house as someone. It's really spending that time together. A good example of this would be the classic, those who game together stay together. People who do hobbies together and their love languages are quality time are going to feel close because they're going to feel loved the more physical hours they spend in each other's company. But it's not like watching TV next to each other. You need to interact during that time. It needs to be pointed quality time that you're actually interacting with each other in between. So I've listed these 5 in no particular order. I don't remember what order they are in the book. But as you go through, Gary helps you to discover how much you associate this love language with your own self and your giving and receiving of love. And also helps you to identify what the signs are that this might be the love language your partner is used to using or assumes you should understand. And then he teaches you and guides you how to speak this love language. If your partner values acts of service, do little acts of service to try to show them your love. If your partner values compliments, just look for one thing every day to compliment them on. Little things like that in his anecdotes repair a marriage in a matter of months. And because you have identified the partner's specific needs as it's a very custom solution to that specific marriage, to that specific person. And then it teaches you to listen. So, for example, acts of service isn't your love language at all. You would rather have a kiss on the cheek and a compliment than having them do anything for you. And yet every night your partner comes to you and says, I made you this lunchbox, or I cooked you this meal, or I built you this thing. I did this for you. It doesn't matter what it is. I did this for you. I did the taxes. I finished this job for you. And you're like, I wish you would just stop spending time on all this nonsense and spend time with me. And then after a while, after reading the book, you can kind of figure out, but they were trying to love me, just not in a way I could appreciate and understand. So them spending time on doing the taxes was showing me love because now I don't have to do it anymore. But if you can't recognize this, if you can't hear love when it's spoken to you, then you don't feel loved. And through these little points, through these 5 simple languages and small tactics to employ to show and hear love, in his anecdotes, this theory saves relationships. And I can sort of see it working. My parents were always very into the love languages thing. They were very into self-help about that type of stuff when raising us. So I was always kind of aware of this type of concept. But only after reading the book myself can I see how to employ it. Can I recognize, oh, my best friend, who I've known for 20 years, her love language is 100% acts of service. I know this now. And then I can try to focus, oh, she's doing this for me, I have to appreciate it. And then I can try, let me see what acts of service I can try to do for her. Let me look for acts of service because I want her to know she loves me. But how do I do that if it's not, how do I find an active service that's going to show her that? That's the type of thing, for example. So yeah, I think it would be a good exercise. Just think about it a bit. I'd really love it if we could all rank our love languages down in the comments. Just to kind of think about it. Think about what type of love you appreciate and what type of love you give. If your way of showing love is a gift, then that's one of your love languages. And maybe it's not the person you're trying to show love to. You need to also speak in their language. You can't expect the world to adjust to you. So, very valuable book. It is immensely popular for good reason. I think it's also very practically written. It's not a bunch of theory and a bunch of complicated things to confuse the whole thing, and psychology and ENTP and INT. It's none of that nonsense. It's basic, it's practical, it's the working man's solution to relationships. And I think it's really valuable. This is 5 stars. All the stars. I think it's really valuable theory. And I think if more people understood this, and if they are willing to put in the care and work, then we probably won't have issues with people falling out of love and getting divorced at the rate that we currently are. Okay. So then, if you've been thinking now about your love languages and you've been struggling to rate them, Gary suggests there might be 2 problems. The first might be that you are one lucky bastard, and throughout your whole life, you have been so lucky as to experience enough of each type of this language that you're kind of equal in all of them. You can understand gift giving as a love language. You have been so filled with love that all 5 your tanks are full, and you don't get confused. You understand all of this different type of love and you know how to give it. And then lucky you. Honestly, I'd love to see all of you in this stage of life where you can speak and listen to all 5 of the love languages in all the different dialects and just know when people love you and know how to love. I think that would be amazing, but it's unlikely that everybody knows this. And then the other reason you might not know what your love languages are just by thinking about it might be because you haven't received enough love to recognize it. That you haven't given enough love to recognize how you prefer giving. And that's a much, much sadder reality to deal with. But there's always a solution. Practice. Take on each of the 5 love languages and try. Test your hand out. Does this feel right? Does this feel sincere? Does this feel real? If it doesn't, let it go. Get back to it later. When you're finished sorting yourself out, you can become an expert in all 5 love languages. But find your native tongue first. Everybody inherently has one that they just hold on to a little bit more. So experiment and find what's yours. Remember, it's never too late to learn. So if you've been struggling with love and relationships, it's really never too late. Just maybe get the book. Try it out. If a person is worth enough in your life that you're willing to put in work to keep them, there is no reason that relationship shouldn't last. So if you have been struggling with love and relationships, I would say this. If 2 people value each other enough and are willing enough to put in the work that this book suggests, I see no reason that they shouldn't be together. And maybe right now you are putting in the work, but you're putting in the work in the wrong language. So get the book, try it out, try the practical steps Gary lays out, and if the relationship is worth it, it's worth a try.